us today. So I am here with the fabulous, wonderful, strong, very inspiring Janelle Veteri. She is a 20-year veteran, at least at our club, in teaching classes from cycling to TRX to Pilates and even strength and cardio formats. She is a master Schwinn cycling indoor cycling instructor, and their kind of overarching company is Core Health and Fitness. And she recently, you've done it 2 times now, you had said, done 2 virtual 8-hour trainings to new instructors. And so during this crazy time of transferring, or people are saying the word pivot a lot, to online classes, fitness experiences, and now virtual online training for group fitness instructors and even personal training or specialized trainings, I asked Janelle, and she graciously accepted to just join me today live to ask her some questions on what going virtual for a 8-hour cycling training was like, how she prepared for it, and what tips and feedback she has for people who might be going virtual for the first time. So Janelle, my first question is, preparing for this virtual experience, getting ready to be a virtual instructor, what did that look like, and how was that different from a live in-person class or course?
I don't think you can fully prepare for what it's like, because we're so used to the interaction when we're presenting. The eye contact, you can see when people are engaging with you. Even though the content I know like the back of my hand, it was so different because we don't have that feedback. So the number one thing is you have to completely slow down. You have to imagine that you're talking to kindergartners, and I thought that I was prepared. I by no means was prepared for that full experience of not having the feedback, not having the live questions, even though we had our chat feature open and people could chime in. The one thing I will say, that if you're going to go somewhere like 8 hours, even probably 5 hours, 4 hours, you do need to have duo presenters, at least 2, if not more than that, so people can answer the chat. Because that's really essential to get that feedback piece, because people don't have that opportunity to answer the questions. And while you're presenting, you physically cannot answer the chat at the same time. So that was important. The other thing that I think all of us know when we're teaching a certification live is so many times great questions come up, but we know that that's our next slide, or that's coming up in 2 slides, right? So what we ended up doing is kind of our certification, I think like most, is kind of batched as far as information. Like we present exercise science, and then we'll present the setup of the bike. So what we had asked is that people hold their questions, unless it's, hey, my screen has gone blank, and something like that, to hold their questions to the end of a segment, because likely their question could be answered. So it's just kind of remembering those things that we do normally in live certs. But I think first thing I noticed, I had a team of, there was 2 additional people in my room, and probably the first time after the first 10 minutes, they held up a sign that said, slow down. So
that's
my
awesome.
number one tip to begin with.
Yeah. No. And so having that extra person there helping you with fielding the comments, and was she there in person with you, or was she just on the call paying attention to those comments?
No, she was actually, so here's what I think is very beneficial, is to have at least 2 people. And one person answers the chat, at minimum 2 people, right? One person will answer the chat while one is presenting, and then you switch. So then that other person will present from a different location. It's just, it gives people a different visual.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard. I don't know how many people have done that yet, but to stay focused on a screen
Mm,
for 8 hours. There's
yes.
so much. And thankfully, in our certification, we do have them moving a little bit, but I took a lot
Mhm.
of time to break it down and think about how in each section I could actually have them stand up, do something physical with their
Yeah.
body. If it's, and we knew that people didn't have indoor bikes at home. So
Mhm.
I had to really think about how can I get people up and moving and interactive during the certification rather than just sitting down. So you really think about how you can do that with people. So it's a big challenge, but I think switching locations and switching people is pretty essential. Yeah.
Definitely. And then within the space that you were teaching, you had those people that were like, "Slow down."
Well, we were where I was. Luckily, I was in a really large studio filming
Mhm.
that had a really specialized camera that could
Yeah.
kind of follow me around. So what we
So
found out
cool.
though, after having done it twice, we kind of
Mhm.
figured out that you may not really need that specialized camera. We did kind of
Interesting.
Yeah, so sometimes I think we can overcomplicate things a little bit. The camera was great, but I think we could have done without it. Um,
Mhm.
but we did have, so then I had the person who was kind of in charge of the studio who
Mhm.
let us in, and
Mhm.
she was in the background, and who's also had a lot of experience actually doing these lab certifications. Then we
Mhm.
had my manager who was actually running the Zoom call. So she was kind of
Mhm.
moderating that. And then, there are definitely challenges with technology, and you have to learn to
Yeah.
go with the flow.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to control the slides. So
Oh, wow.
our
Yeah.
slide deck is over 200 slides, and having to
Mhm.
know exactly what slide came next, it was a big
Whew.
test. It was a big test.
And did you
And then
know that going in?
no, I didn't know that going in.
Oh,
Mm-mm.
wow. Yeah. Good for
So,
you.
so there were definitely some, I mean, get ready for some
Yeah.
technology challenges, and you just go with it. Sometimes my screen would go black. So that's where
Mhm.
we know where we are in the content. I think it's really important that, you are 100% engaged in what you
Mhm.
are doing, and we know our content. I mean, we're master trainers. You know your content. You just have
Mhm.
to go with the technology, bring the stories that are relevant, and be able to
Mhm.
expand if your screen all of a sudden goes completely blank and um, you have the PowerPoint slides not going to be there for you for a little while. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it
No,
it's a
that's true.
yeah,
It's
it's a
a
challenge,
process. It's new.
but it was also, I tell you, participants, the what surprised me is the feedback from participants and how
Mhm.
grateful they are, how
Mhm.
understanding of technology issues they are.
Yeah.
Um, the amount there really has not been a lot of there hasn't been really any negative feedback. People are just really grateful and excited to have the content. So um,
Mhm.
that was that was at least something that was very uplifting.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's so great how patient people can be, and
yeah.
no, I love it. So it sounds like it's very different. It's very different. What would you say was did you have to tweak the schedule at all as far as like your 8 hour schedule, as far as breaks, or like you'd said, getting them moving, keeping their attention? What were some other strategies you had as far as the schedule?
That is a great question. And it was definitely something we changed on our second certification.
Mhm.
We gave longer breaks for sure.
Mhm.
So it might have been 90 minutes of content and then a 15-minute break.
Mhm.
Our breaks were always 15 minutes to give people plenty of time to move around, um,
Mhm.
use facilities, grab water, everything. But 15 minutes seemed to be the sweet spot. And then we gave one 30-minute break after our workout for kind of that lunchtime
Mhm.
there. Yeah. So I think setting the rules up very clearly in advance is important. Um,
Mhm.
really let people know it's not their typical Zoom call. Be
Mhm.
really mindful of that chat feature, that the chat should go just to you and the presenters, because
Mhm.
everyone will start reading all of the chats and then they won't pay attention to the content
Mhm.
the presenter is presenting. So that chat feature, it's, this is a workshop, it's not a Zoom social call. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so watch out for that. We did, because I mean we've made that mistake where we let everyone see all of the comments, thinking
Mhm.
that, oh, if one person has this question, everyone will have this question.
Mhm.
Well, then they start focusing on the chat
Yeah. Yeah.
and their questions get answered and you get really far behind. So um, it's a fine balance. You really have to play around with that. The other thing we're continuing to refine is, after that 15-minute break,
Mhm.
we can look at what the chat has been. And if there's been a couple of consistent questions, just go back and revisit that for the whole group. So I think there's ways to still address um, big gaps if they're to close big gaps at the end of each section, but you have to be really strategic about it.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Hopefully
being
that makes sense.
strategic. No, totally being
Longer
strategic
breaks,
about
yes, but definitely longer breaks help.
comments.
Yeah.
Love that, because really, if you think about comments that way, it could kind of turn into in like a in-person training. You'd have them like all texting to each other. And
Well,
that's
just like live trainings, you have
yeah.
all different levels of experience, right? And
Yeah.
I love having really experienced people
Mhm.
in live certifications. They can provide a lot of good feedback. At the same
Yeah.
time, they can hijack your presentation.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they're just waiting for you to keel over and die so they can take over because they know everything.
Just like our front row participants, right?
Yes. 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 And you know what? And there's that fine balance that we can always have when we're leading a live certification. That
Mhm.
balance, you can't control that in a virtual situation. So at least we haven't found the way to do that. So
Yeah.
you love to draw off people's experience, but it's in a virtual world. It's challenging to do that.
I love that. I love that 15-minute, and then you can go back to the comments strategically that you are getting. All great ideas I would
Yeah.
never have thought of. So that's why I love having your experience
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
here to learn from. And so, as far as I know, it sounds like you had to prepare differently for this. What was in that preparing process? Any of the research that you did as far as best practices, or is there like a resource you would recommend for people who are trying to learn the virtual world? Um, yeah, for our listeners.
Yeah, I think fine tune your keynote or your PowerPoint,
Hmm.
and you may have to tweak it. So there was a section where we go over specifics on the bike, components of the bike. What we ended up doing is showing just a screen with an image of the bike with arrows pointing to it, because we
Hmm.
couldn't get close enough. So it's
Yeah,
really looking at, it's hard, but you look at each slide and be like, okay, where in this, did I had everybody stand up and look underneath, look at their bike and physically touch the bike. You can't
yeah,
do that in a virtual situation. They may not have bikes. So I think it's
yeah.
really to fine tune, and you need to go through each slide and figure
Hmm.
out, maybe there's a different way you need to present it virtually than you would um, in a
Hmm.
live setting. And
Hmm.
at the same time, how can you get them to be interactive? How can you have them move
Hmm.
their bodies, stand up and absorb something a different way? So looking at your whole keynote with a different lens.
Definitely,
So
and reviewing it with that lens. That's so
mm,
good. As far as practice, I happened to see on your social media you were like, "I'm practicing." It looked like it was late at night when you were practicing for
yeah, lots of
the
practice.
the training. What kind of how would you be strategic when it comes to preparing and practicing for a virtual training?
Yeah, that's where I practice talking slower and talking
Yeah.
though with energy. And
Mhm.
I will tell you, it is, I, in a live setting, my energy is endless. I just, because I get it back from the people. You will not have that energy flowing back to you. So you got to bring it, and you got to bring it without that feedback coming back. It's, it is not, I will tell you, it's not enjoyable like the live trainings. It really isn't. It
Yeah.
is work.
Yeah,
But you have to
totally.
bring that same energy and excitement,
Mhm.
pretending that there's someone there just absorbing your every word. So
Yeah.
it is hard work and it's exhausting. But what I was
Mhm.
practicing mainly was the new slide additions that I had changed.
Mhm.
I was practicing just speaking through it slowly with
Mhm.
energy, with that
Mhm.
excitement behind it. And
Mhm.
it is a big
Yeah.
challenge, but and it's just a whole, it's a whole different level of energy you have to bring, because you have to
Mhm.
slow down and you have to
Mhm.
be prepared that you won't have that feedback.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
that's the
so
main
good.
thing I was practicing the new slides. The other thing we did is we shortened our workout. We usually do a
Mhm.
60-minute workout. We shortened it down to 30 minutes. The other thing we
Yeah.
did, that I didn't show, was all of the additional content we gave, which I suggest you think about too. We gave a lot of additional content, that we don't normally give in the live certifications.
Mhm.
So things like, uh, links to a link to a additional music workshop. We gave a link to, different rides with master trainers, so they could see that, and when they had a bike they could actually go and do a full ride with a master trainer, um, during the test, because we knew it was going to be exhausting for them at that 8 hour mark. We had prizes, and so that is
Mhm.
when we did turn on the chat, because I
Mhm.
had them chime in when we went over each test question what the answer was, and
Mhm.
randomly the first person to answer would get a prize.
Oh, I love
So we
that.
tried to
Get
make
them
it,
kinda
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, who doesn't like
giving
something
those
for free?
opportunities. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but
So
giving
we
those
gave away,
opportunities to
yeah,
connect, that's good.
yeah, and the additional things. So, but sorry, I went off on a little tangent there. But I think as far as practicing, it's, you want to practice, but keep in mind it's gonna just be learning your first time, and then,
Yeah,
um, each time you do it, it gets better. The second
yeah,
time
yeah,
was definitely, we definitely improved quite a bit the second time.
yeah. And you had said that you and Doris had actually recapped afterwards. So what does
Oh yeah.
that look like as far as recapping? You guys set up a time to meet and chat about the specifics and go over what your thoughts were. That's really smart.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You definitely,
Yeah,
and thankfully you can also record your
I was
sessions.
gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the first time, we had a technology issue and we did not have it recorded. We
Oh,
remembered plenty of it though. We remembered plenty of areas we could improve on. And then the second time, it's still downloading right now because it's like 2 megabytes.
yeah,
It's a huge file, but,
long.
reviewing that is going to be really important.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I love that.
yeah.
Love that. And then were there any tips beforehand that you had received from other people who had done virtual trainings that you were like, oh yes, I'm going to implement those things that maybe Core Health and Fitness gave you?
Yeah. We made sure we had a really solid backdrop that was a
Hmm.
logo. Um,
Hmm.
we tested everything, tested all of its technology, even though it still didn't go perfect. We still
Yeah.
tested transferring back and forth between presenters multiple times. That went pretty seamless. But
Hmm.
I think the more you practice, especially if you're using two presenters or more,
Hmm.
practicing going back and forth, practicing going through your slides,
Hmm.
definitely practice if you have music. That's the hardest part, is listening to music, and, the bandwidth that goes behind music. Know,
Hmm.
letting participants know this may not come across to you correctly. It depends on your connection, your speed.
Yeah.
Um, so, we tested everything multiple times that we could control.
Yeah.
So the prep work behind it is extensive, but it's worth it. And then that
Mhm.
also builds
Mhm.
confidence
Yes.
between the presenter. We've done this, we know this. So,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be professionals. It's supposed to go right. So as much
Mhm.
as we can take out that that
Mhm.
that layer of
Mhm.
confusion,
Yeah.
and be really, competent with what
Mhm.
we're doing is important.
Mhm.
So there was the night before was a long practice session.
Yeah. And then for, I guess, for preparing your participants, what were some of the expectations that you did lay out pretty clearly? It sounds like, you know, turning off the chat or setting
Yeah.
expectations on that, when the breaks were going to be. I'm assuming you asked people to be on mute as well.
Yeah, and you can control that too, the way that they
Mhm.
come in, but it's
Mhm.
good to make sure. Yeah, I think we just shut that off during the with Zoom. We set it up as a webinar, so we were able to control
Mhm.
that ahead of time. So that was already set up, but they always have pre-work. And that's another way to, I think, to think about some of the things. What could you give to them in advance that could be
Mhm.
pre-work? Because who wants to
Mhm.
sit somewhere for 8 hours? That's really hard. So if there
Yeah.
could be pre-work that they do in advance,
Yeah.
we've always given them some things they need to do in advance.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing you have to remember is that there may be some people that have never used Zoom or never
Mhm.
used the technology.
Yes.
So
Yes.
some people are going to need additional instruction, and making sure that that's available to them.
Mhm. That's
Uh,
great.
so I think, yeah, there was, yeah, they at least had there was a email that was sent out well in advance for them to be
Mhm.
prepared and to make sure that they had all, their
Mhm.
Zoom downloaded, uh,
Mhm.
testing it out, gave them some website, of course, hey, if you don't know
Mhm.
about Zoom, click on this. You can learn about
Yeah.
Zoom, how to get on,
Yeah.
all the basics, but make sure that's covered. Don't expect that everybody is as technical, as savvy
Yeah.
as you think. So you want to
No,
make sure
that's
everyone's prepared.
great. That's great
Send
feedback.
out
Great
pre-work as much
feedback.
as you can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. No, that's great because then that just eats. I imagine that would just eat up time trying to get everyone on. How many people did you
Yeah.
have in your trainings the past couple?
The first one was, oh gosh, it had to be, I think it was around 60 was the first one, and we
Wow.
had close to 50 on the second one.
Wow.
But I know
Wow.
other master trainers where it's been, the bar above, those have been over 100,
Yeah.
over
Crazy.
100 participants.
Yeah.
And on those, I think it's important that you have multiple master
Mhm.
trainers responding to a chat if needed, um,
Definitely.
to make sure questions are answered. So, but
Definitely.
I think it's going to continue. I think this is
Yeah.
what's exciting is I think there will always be live trainings, but I
Mhm.
think now we see the value of virtual trainings for people that can't attend those. This is
Yeah.
another venue. I would
Definitely.
love to see um, a virtual training, but then you could have the option to
Mhm.
go audit a live training, is assuming space is available, because I always think you get more, you'll absorb so much more in a live setting. So I would
Mhm.
love to see that option.
Yeah, I'm starting to see, even though we are pivoting way more online, I am hearing different ideas of when we are able to become more in person, how we
Mhm.
can hybrid the two, which I think
Yeah.
you're right, makes sense. Because as we all know, there's nothing better than the in person experience. But
Hmm.
like you said, it does open doors for scenarios like this, very
Yeah.
unusual scenarios.
Yes.
Um, and then I love how you had mentioned, so what you had them kind of do in advance, your participants. What were some of the things they had to do after the course to prove that they were obviously engaged and earned the right to have the whatever certification slash
Yeah.
CECs they got at the end?
Yeah. Our test is a test that we do together as a group. so that there is a test and an exam. I think, part of me wonders if maybe there should be a second tier where they have to actually answer on their own before they get that full certification. But that's not something at this point that we enforce. I think with high fitness though, they have to send back a video of them teaching. I think that's
Yeah,
what
they do.
they do, which is
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
which is a really interesting format. We'd have to
Yeah.
figure out how we review that. I know that there's I'm becoming a rowing coach, and that's part of
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
criteria before I can
Hmm.
teach is that I have to submit a video of me actually doing
Hmm.
class. So I
Hmm.
think that's a nice control if that can be put in
Hmm.
place, but we don't have that
Hmm.
currently. Um, the follow-up information that we give them just gives them more guidance as far as different
Yeah.
music sites that they can use, and
Hmm.
then it gives them all the additional bonus content. With Zoom, we can see how long they've been online though. And no
Oh,
one would
great.
get, and we
Yeah.
verify it that way. No one would
Nice.
actually get
Hmm.
a certification because we mail
Hmm.
them the actual certification. But what
Hmm.
we do is we look and we see how long have they really physically been online.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we haven't
Great.
had anybody yet that hasn't, but we do
Yeah.
check that and verify
Yeah.
that they
Smart.
were
Yeah.
participating.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another concern I had.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
don't want to just be talking to myself for 8 hours.
Exactly. Or just pay me and you're
Yeah.
going to be certified. Now you can take this. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we make sure that they're actually signed in, and with Zoom, it's really nice because it will tell you how long they've been on.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's awesome. And then you've given a lot of great advice as far as preparing and actually implementing the training. Is there anything else you could think of that you would just say would be advice for people in their first virtual training?
Okay, this is crazy, but think about the clothing you're wearing. Like for me, I always wear black pants, but my backdrop had black in it, and they were like, "Oh
Oh,
no." So guess what I wore? I wore the red pants, Stacy.
awesome.
And they look
Yay.
great. But you do need to think
Good.
about how you're
Yeah.
going to stand out in
Yeah.
your, how you're going to look. How is that visually? Because they're visually looking at something for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So your backdrop is super important.
Mhm.
And you want to make sure that, you don't just blend into the back. So
Yeah.
I wore bright red pants
Love
because my
it.
backdrop was black.
That'll keep them awake too.
Yeah, but I mean, it looked weird when I wore
So
black pants. It was
smart.
like I just blended into
She
the
has
back.
no
It just kind of
legs.
was out there. Yeah, so it's the little, it's those little things. But if you're going
Yeah.
to charge people, it needs to be professional. We need to make this as
Yeah.
professional as possible. So practicing where you're going to stand, where you're
Hmm.
going to move, and making sure that the camera looks right. Thinking
Yeah.
about the slides, like I said, when we point specifically to a bike, it was more important for us to
Mhm.
show the slide deck and show arrows going to the areas of the bike I was talking
Mhm.
about. So we changed up some things, but um,
That's great.
you've got to make it professional. So I
Mhm.
think you have to take all that time to go through those slides again and fine tune.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, love it. I love it.
And bright
And
red
then how are
pants.
you wear those bright red pants? And actually, my next question was going to be, you'd said, learning to slow down, but how were you able to, what are some of the things you did to make sure that you still stayed like how you made it energetic along with maintaining that slower clarity while you were speaking? Was it using your body or more eye contact?
Yes, I mean I think normally I'm pretty animated and a lot of
Yeah.
that. So that
Yeah.
comes pretty easy for me. I did
Mhm.
videotape myself a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I did that, and
Mhm.
I've always done that, but I
Yeah.
videotape myself with a new lens of what if I
Mhm.
was the person just sitting there watching it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
videotape yourself and then
Mhm.
sit down, pretend you're that person, watch it, and
Yeah.
see how that really feels. Like, are you
That's
taking
great.
enough pauses for people to think?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
it's different. I had to slow down and give them time for that pause. And I do that naturally in a live certification, but when you have
Mm-hmm.
that person is not in front of you, you'll be surprised how you're not as sharp, and you'll just fly through your content. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so definitely just videotape yourself and notice how
Yeah.
you have to really stop.
Definitely.
Very
That's
good.
so good. And then how are you feeling about the next one? Anything you're thinking you want to, what did you and Doris discuss or things you want to work on for next time?
Yeah, I think we're gonna. There's definitely some things we can. There's areas that we've overcomplicated, and we can. We may not need to use such a high-end camera system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Still fine-tuning music and how that's going to come across. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just continuing to learn how to use the technology, making sure that
Yeah.
we have the right settings.
Yeah.
And then what's different is then when you have everybody on, that can change the as far as the bandwidth goes and the different settings.
Yes.
So um, it's kind of live and learn right now, but we're all
Yeah.
figuring it out. And I think the big piece too is just playing around and understanding the technology and really trying to figure out the best way and the best way to give the best experience, especially when you're doing sections that may include music. Um,
Yeah.
One thing we've been discussing is how much content do we want to pre-record. For example, the
Mm-hmm.
live ride. Do we want them to just switch over and watch a link of a live ride and possibly do that if
Mm-hmm.
they have an indoor bike rather than me do an actual live ride? So
Yeah.
what is going to be the best experience for the participants?
Mm-hmm.
Because if the music doesn't sound right, um,
Mm-hmm.
is a live ride a better option or is a pre-recorded ride the best option? So you have to kind of
Yeah.
play around with those two things.
Yeah. And I guess when you're watching your participants watching you, can you guys observe? And I'm sure when you watch it again, is it easy to observe when people are really listening, or is that tough to tell?
Yeah. So we did not have their live screens up at that time
Yeah,
because there was
because it
just
can
there's
really
just too
slow
many.
things
There's
down,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah.
there's too many. Um,
Mhm.
so we didn't have that piece of feedback where we could visually see if they
That's
were
tough.
really engaged or not.
Yeah,
That would be a really that'd be something that'd be very nice to have. We just need a
yeah,
massive projector that could
yeah.
have images of, you know,
That'd be hard. Yeah,
40 to 60 people, right? Or to
yeah,
be able to
yeah.
flip through it. And then, but that would be nice to see that the visual
Mhm,
feedback from them in the recording, and that's something we're missing. But at
mhm.
the end of the day, the surveys that come back and
Yeah,
how people have definitely commented on, I can't believe I could stay engaged for that long. They
yeah, that's
definitely commented
great,
on that they could stay and they could absorb the content. So I
great.
feel like it's going okay.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
You
Yeah,
just
and then
gotta
you
you
do,
just
yeah. No,
oh, go
so
ahead.
true.
Yeah, no, you just gotta be on it. You have to bring that extra energy, excitement,
Mhm.
entertainment.
Yeah,
It is work for the presenter. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Be
And
on.
just
Have some extra coffee.
yeah, right. Red Bull, all you need. I will say, so it sounds like you guys surveyed them afterwards, which is also really smart, asking them
Yeah.
for their feedback. Yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds great.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Those are all the questions I have for you. I've learned so much just
Oh,
on how to
thanks.
prepare and what to think about, things I would have never thought about, what may not be as valuable, like the camera stuff is good to know, may not need to go super fancy, but definitely having extra manpower sounds like is the strategy. Having extra people there, extra
Yeah.
presenters. Mhm. Yeah, which I've
Yes.
never would have never thought about. So, and tell them, give them their homework beforehand and then ask them questions afterwards so you can prepare for the next one. That all sounds
Yes.
great. Any other advice you have or thoughts you have, and then we'll end the show.
Yeah, I think that was the learnings we've had so far. So hopefully it is helpful. And
Yeah,
yeah, maybe
yeah.
we'll end up I like your thoughts too on, potentially this will be a hybrid model going forward. Maybe they can take
Yeah.
in a couple hours of content ahead of time, and then
Mhm.
we can shorten some of our live certifications, or just take them a little more in depth, because
Yeah.
it's a lot of
No.
information to
Yeah.
absorb for someone,
Mhm.
especially when we
Totally.
have. I think the other thing that's interesting is having such a wide variety. We have people that have been
Mhm.
certified, but they were certified 3 or 5 years ago, and they want to come back and
Mhm.
do it again, because
Mhm.
we update our content. So, do
Yeah.
those people, maybe they don't need some of the basic information? Maybe that can be
Yeah.
given in a virtual content earlier. I don't know. We're
Mhm.
gonna have to see how this all plays out, but
No.
kind of
Totally.
exciting times.
So
It's never
exciting.
boring. It's
So
never boring.
exciting. No, it's not. So if I have to say, I mean, now I'm a master instructor too. I'm like, I've got to make it happen. Gotta just
Yes, Stacy, I know you will.
dive in. But I have to say that Schwinn, quick plug for Schwinn, their training and their coaching model for any instructor is just brilliant. And like you said, you change your content. So I need to do another one. It's been a while. I need to do another Schwinn training too. So I
Anytime,
highly
Stacy,
recommend
you
it.
are my guest. Anytime.
I will pop in there. All
Sounds
right.
great.
Thank you so much, Janelle, for your time.
Okay.
And
Good luck,
I
everyone.
so appreciate your knowledge and expertise.
Okay. All right. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks, Stacy. Bye, everybody.